welcome to another live edition of Blacklisted Radio. It's good to be back. It's the 20th day of November 2016. I'm your host, as always, Doug Owen. You can follow me on Twitter. BLN Radio is the handle. Of course, the mothership, blacklistedradio.com, is where we have an interactive chat room that you can use during the duration of the live show that we do right now, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, Sunday evenings. We curate news at blacklistednews.com. I'm the senior editor there, and tonight we have a guest. We diverge away from the monologue that we usually do here on the show. I think this is probably our second guest of 2016, and I was getting to the point where I was going to have to change the bio and the description of the show because we just don't do a lot of interviews, primarily because there's just not a lot of people that I want to interview. I don't want to sound douchey or condescending, but there's just not a lot of people that I find to be that interesting that we should bring them on the show. Most people have a lot of conduits and outlets for content. There are just a bevy of different independent media, radio stations, and the like. So there's no shortage of content that you can find out on the internet, although there are plans to make it harder for you to find great content. So tonight I am pleased to be joined by our guest, Dyer of JaysAnalysis.com. Jay, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Doug. Glad to be here. I didn't realize that I was such an elite choice here. You don't do many interviews.
Well, you are, and it's because I've been following your content for probably about 2 years now, and I find, I don't find a lot of time for myself to review a lot of movies and film, and so I love what you do because I get number one, it gives me a reason to watch movies again and to actually, look at some of the symbology, the occult rituals that play out in Hollywood movies. So tonight we're going to talk about your book, but tell me how you got involved in some of the different things that you've been studying, esoteric Hollywood, sex, cults, symbols, film, and what's your motivation behind that?
Well, like you, I guess about 8 or 9 years ago, I got into activism, but I was kind of tired of the content that was out there. It was like there was a lot of libertarian sites, there was a lot of Alex Jones style sites, and I just kind of got tired of that same old monotony. And I got the idea from a couple blogs I had seen that were kind of doing movie reviews and pointing out symbolism and how it might relate to things like 9/11 or something like that. And I thought, why not have a site that just does that? So I was actually doing it before there was a Vigilant Citizen or any of those kind of sites. And around the same time, I was doing my undergraduate work, and I took a lot of film classes, and I took philosophy classes, history classes, and I thought, actually there's a lot you could mine in movies and really pull out a lot of these meanings, the hidden depths that are there, because a lot of thought goes into film, a lot more than you might think, and particularly in relationship to the government's connection to Hollywood, or the deep state, or the CIA, or different intelligence agencies, and how they can actually use film or big blockbusters or anything in that regard for social engineering.
Sure.
And I think that's what happens a lot. And so that's a big part of what I wrote about in the book. It's not just that, but it's a little bit of geopolitics, a little bit of philosophy, a little bit of religion. It's a little bit of, social engineering and psychological warfare. And so the reason I got into it is because that's actually kind of what I was studying in my undergrad.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely, I think one of the things that we both have in common is that we got into being politically aware through activism, and because there was definitely a void, 8-10 years ago, there wasn't a lot of content on the internet, and now there's lots of it. And of course, you mentioned Vigilant Citizen. There's lots of websites out there that curate news, and I think that's a great thing that there's more people out there that are more aware of it than just seeing the driving interest in it. So I mean, you've been pretty prolific. Of course, your book, Esoteric Hollywood, Sex, Cults, and Symbols in Film, I read through the first chapter that you sent me. Pretty riveting work. Of course, I have to say that I thought your analysis of Kubrick is pretty interesting. I mean, he's definitely somebody that's gotten a lot of attention in the alternative media. Some of his films are, quintessential if you're looking for esoterica, if you're looking for, deep symbology. And, just talk a little bit about your thoughts on Kubrick.
Right. Well, I put Eyes Wide Shut as the first full film analysis, and I think there's about the first 70 or 80 pages deal with Kubrick. So the book's 363 pages and about 404 footnotes. So it's a lot of research, but Kubrick he got pride of place because the films are so packed with meaning and relevance, and particularly Eyes Wide Shut. I think you could probably call that the ultimate conspiracy film,
right?
Just to put it simply, because you've got this elite clique that is using sex magic, and we've seen so many stories come out of Hollywood that I think reveal the reality to sex magic in Hollywood and people being into bizarre cults and everything from Scientology to Kabbalah. That's all a
Sure.
big part of Hollywood. And I think that what Kubrick was trying to say with Eyes Wide Shut is that the viewing audience, us out here in the profane world, we don't see how the world's really run, and the world is really run by the kind of people that Bill Harford, that is Tom Cruise's character, runs into in this movie. These kind of billionaire class, these George Soros types that can seemingly manipulate entire events and sort of cold just create them out of thin air, and that's the take that I have with the film, is that Bill is kind of being led down this path into a kind of initiatory journey, but also ultimately it's about revealing to him that even as a kind of upper middle class nouveau riche doctor in New York, he doesn't really run things. It's the billionaire class, it's the the George Soros types, the Bill Gates types, that I think have the most power and control, and I think Kubrick was telling us that. So the book that I wrote is not just a conspiracy book. It's also kind of literary analysis. It's also philosophy, and it also gets into, as you mentioned, this kind of a occult side of things, because I think in the film what we're being shown is pretty obviously sex magic.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I was pretty unilluminated the first time that I saw the film, and I knew that there was something really sinister and wicked that was happening there. It's definitely worth watching. One of the things I think that you mentioned in the book is that they're actually at a Rothschild mansion. Is that correct?
Yeah, if I recall, trying to remember I get some of the settings of some of the films mixed up, because that I believe that is correct. And then Roman Polanski's Ninth Gate actually used a different French elite estate for the satanic ritual in his film. So this is kind of weird. It's kind of commonplace, because we also saw this same Rothschild mansion from Eyes Wide Shut is used in, if I recall, it's the one that's used as Wayne Manor in Batman, the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy. Really? Wow. Yeah, I know for a fact that's the one in Batman, but I'm trying to remember off the top of my head about Eyes Wide Shut. I'm not trying to be fuzzy here, but I actually wrote that Eyes Wide Shut analysis about 5 years ago. But
right. Well, I mean, the footnotes are extensive. I mean, I even see references to Kurt Nimmo, one of the writers at blacklistednews.com. There's just a ton of great references in here, and like you said, it goes from geopolitics to satanic worship, Marxist culture, all sorts
Frankfurt
of stuff.
School,
yeah. Of course, this band that I'm really into called Black Dahlia Murder, it brings a lot of interest to me personally, just because I didn't know anything about it. And then I researched the name, and I found some of the David Lynch's Lost Highway. Watched that.
Oh yeah.
David Lynch is another one. He's right there alongside Kubrick. That I think that if you want to see really meta symbology and a lot of occult references and just an interesting kind of voyeuristic look, kind of like Eyes Wide Shut.
Exactly.
This guy that's peeking in on these elites.
Yes, voyeurism is that was kind of a fascination for Hitchcock as well, and I've got a chapter on Hitchcock where Vertigo seems to have that theme. So I think Hitchcock kind of anticipated the rise of the camera in everyday life, and that's what we've actually seen. Nowadays everybody has an iPhone with a camera.
Sure.
And there's a good side to that. There's also a bad side to that. And I think that voyeuristic element was anticipated by the spy culture, which is a big part of the Cold War period, and that's why there's a whole section devoted to Ian Fleming and 007 and all that. But yeah, I did continue the Kubrick section with 2001 and The Shining, and I think that while those might be kind of cookie cutter, classics, or overdone, maybe, I thought they were necessary just because they're such important films. And I have a different take than somebody like Jay Weidner, who I do like. I do appreciate his work, and actually he and I will be doing a full series of TV installments called Esoteric Hollywood probably in the next year. We're planning on that, and so I do like his work, but I do differ with him on interpreting The Shining. I'm not convinced that it was about the moon landing per se. There could be references to that, but I take it more as just kind of an occult ghost story and kind of a critique of the American elite. I see 2001 as a kind of alchemical journey
Sure.
Of man, the ascent of man. But that kind of comprises, the first 100 pages or so, 90 pages, the Kubrick section. And then I get into somebody who I think is kind of obvious as a filmmaker, but I think he's overlooked for his importance in promoting the idea of aliens. Now, I don't actually personally believe in aliens, but I believe that Hollywood believes in aliens in the sense that they're very interested in promoting that ideology. And so I actually go into the history of H.G. Wells and science fiction and how propaganda, scientism nowadays is actually very closely allied to science fiction.
Sure.
They're kind of one and the same, and they function as propaganda. And H.G. Wells was kind of the father of all this. And of course, Wells was a Fabian socialist and a Freemason. And so he had an agenda, a very explicitly communistic agenda. So I go into that and how, from the communistic standpoint, the idea of manipulating the population through engineered ideologies, I would say, like aliens, actually ties into a lot of the real conspiracy in relationship to things like eugenics and population control. And so I go into the Manhattan Project and Jonas Salk and inoculations and all that, and how that ties into Malthusianism. And
sure,
that's kind of the next section of sort of the gray area between science fiction and science reality.
Yeah, I mean, aliens are the best excuse to have really, this one world issue. Ronald Reagan even spoke about it.
Yes, exactly.
It's a great way to get. I mean, the ultimate false flag. People, I know that a lot has been talked about Project Bluebeam, whether or not it came to fruition or what stages. But famous Nazi that came over during Operation Paperclip. Mm-hmm. His name escapes me right now, but anyway, he talked about that and how you could have this unifying
right
force, and just the idea that there are aliens or a possible alien invasion. Probably, it definitely has to be funding a lot of these, deep space, dark space projects that I have to believe that do exist today. But that's just my thought on it. when it comes to social engineering, I've got to get your take. I've seen some of your videos and commentary recently on the huge, monumentous shift in U.S. policy. And when we talk about geopolitics, I mean, the Trump train, the psychological and emotional reaction that we have seen, and primarily because so much of the Hillary Clinton campaign was being driven by Hollywood elites,
yes,
by the media, and then this rejection of that. I mean, I imagine you have to have some interesting thoughts on what we've seen over the last week or so.
Yeah, I did do some reports, some videos that dealt with WikiLeaks and the whole campaign, and I did some different radio interviews that centered on that. And I thought that I was skeptical of Trump, but certainly you couldn't get any worse than Hillary, especially for foreign policy. I felt like Hillary was a war hawk, and I don't think that the operations that the U.S. has been undertaking in other countries are justified. So I don't think that the situation in Syria is accurate in Western media. I think that you really have to go to sites that I write for, like 21st Century Wire, or
that's a fake news site. I saw that on the list of bad sites that I'm not supposed to go to.
Melissa Zarda, as I called her, if you've seen the movie Zarda, her name's something like Zendars or something like that. But she reminds me of the movie Zardoz, which there's a chapter in my book on that goofy movie with Sean Connery in his underwear running around.
Right.
Melissa Zardoz is now one of the goddesses on Mount Olympus, and she's now decided what is real and what is fake.
Ministry of Truth.
Yes, she is the Ministry of Truth, and she's an expert because she specialized in fat studies.
Right.
So a person who has no education other than expertise in fat studies, whatever that is, the media's portrayal of obesity in women, she's going to be the arbiter. And by the way, the funny part of that is that 21st Century Wire was actually listed for a long time on another site back before Mrs. Zardoz. I forget the name of the site, but it was basically some other leftist progressives collection. And so it looks to me like Melissa just kind of lazily Googled fake news sites and copied and pasted a big portion of her list from some other guy's list. So she actually didn't do much homework at all. She just kind of copied and pasted, in my view. But yeah, so that's a
but she's getting credit now, and she is the person that people go to for fake news. So yeah,
because it went viral, right? So she hooked up with whoever published it at Jessica Roy from the LA Times, and now that went viral, and supposedly Google and Facebook are going to collate, and we're going to work maybe from this list. And then once she got called out, actually we contacted her. One of our editors and producer contacted her, and she removed it.
Wow.
So, Patrick actually wanted to respond in an op-ed in LA Times, and they told him no, he would not be allowed to. So it's just beyond ridiculous, actually. Like you said, Ministry of Truth, very Orwellian, absolutely. And
that's one of the things, the fallout from Hillary. I mean, there's just this inability for the media, and of course all the people that were wrong. When you talk about supercomputers, forecasting, I mean, just all of the people, Nate Silver, all of these people that were absolutely dead wrong about Hillary Clinton winning, are trying to figure it out. And of course, I mean, this has been a huge rejection. And, of course, what Donald Trump will be. I mean, I'm pretty unenthusiastic looking at some of the people that he's naming to head the CIA and other important staffing positions. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back with our guest, Jay Dyer of JaysAnalysis.com. On the other side, stay tuned. It's Blacklisted Radio.
I'll spare you the commercials.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate that. And yes, I do know that the Rolling Stones are satanic Luciferians, and I've gotten bitched at about that bumper tune. Do you know you've got the Rolling Stones? I'm like, I know. I'm sorry. I separate that from. I try to keep my music, because that's one of the things that's like near and dear to my heart. And if you like it, you like it. It doesn't make me want to like go out and kill my parents or vote for Hillary Clinton. So I think it's okay. People are like, oh, it's possessing you. Like, if you're weak-minded, it definitely possesses a lot of people. There's a lot of people that are very suggestive, but I find that I don't know. Some people see through the veil, some people don't. Some people are, like crying and freaking out about Hillary Clinton. But if you know what's going on, it doesn't really bother you.
Exactly. Yeah.
It doesn't bother me at all, because I understand how the world works.
Yeah, and I mean, the president doesn't really do that much anyway. He's kind of a functionary, a sort of a front car salesman type position.
Absolutely.
Game show host is Trump's great because he's already been kind of a game show host with the Apprentice. I mean, that's kind of like. Oh
well, I don't know if you've been following his tweets, but he basically said, "I know I'm the only person who knows who the final contestants will be," and it's like, yeah, he's running it like a show. I know who the final contestants will be. Nobody else. Don't stay tuned to my Twitter, and I'll tell you who's going to be.
Well, the JFK, he spent a tremendous amount of time on vacation.
Sure.
And my buddy Chris over at Hoaxbusters has made the point for a long time. If you're really in charge, how are you taking all this vacation? You don't even get that much vacation time if you run a Radio Shack.
Right.
So, is the president really doing that much? I don't really think
he flies around and gives away our money, gives away our jobs. That's what he does. That's basically, I mean, that's what, after looking at this for, 15 years, that's what I've come to. He flies around and gives our fucking money away. And
plays golf afterwards.
Not a bad gig. And now he's got our brother's keeper. He's got his own like Clinton Foundation thing where he's going to probably hang out and be a lobbyist. I don't know. He'll but that does prove the point that the president, I mean, he does have some functionary power. He does have the executive orders and such, but he's limited. Everybody's like, he's going to blow the world up. I'm like, they did. First off, Bill Clinton lost the biscuit that has the nuclear codes for like months. Okay, so it wasn't a big deal, and nobody's talking about that. And number two, it takes a lot more people than just Donald Trump to blow up the earth. It's
Living like we're renegades. Living like we're renegades.
All right, welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio. Jay Dyer joins us here tonight. If you'd like to be part of it, you can text me, 512-222-3067. We'll take your questions there, or you can leave me voicemails. And before the break, we were talking about the emotional reaction. You just see so many people that were that emotionally involved in this election, and what a almost religious experience it is for the people that follow. I mean, it's almost like, you notice this when you see NFL, games. You see people in the stands crying for their team. They're like, distraught. It's just this emotional attachment to this position, as we were talking during the break there, that is what we've come to is basically the salesman of the United States going around and giving U.S. jobs and money away. Go ahead, Jay.
Well, yeah, I was just going to agree that Trump's perfect for it because politics is theater, politics is Hollywood, but with as many people have said, uglier people. It's Hollywood for ugly people, right? And the statecraft, the trade and art of statecraft is very close to stagecraft.
Sure.
And that's a big part of my book. And that's why the Pentagon has had such a close relationship to Hollywood for so long. That's why there's, a liaison office between the Army and the CIA and so forth, with Hollywood. But I argue, in my book, that actually goes a lot deeper than that. It's not just some liaison office. It's actually a long time, deep, been in bed together relationship between where you've had many actors who've been actual spies who work for the CIA or for the FBI. You can look at people like
George Clooney,
Jimmy Stewart.
Oh.
I think George Clooney is a perfect example of somebody who's obviously, in some capacity, probably maybe even above CIA, in that he's pretty much CFR along with Angelina Jolie. They're working directly with the UN.
Oh, they're handled, but they are.
Yeah,
I mean, they easily get you into countries that you couldn't get there otherwise. I mean, if you're riding on the coattails of George Clooney, he can go anywhere. Okay, they would welcome him in Aleppo right now. He could drop on the ground and it would be huge. So yeah, I mean that's why. Then there's this long history. I mean, it's between the CIA and Hollywood. It goes back to
and the FBI in Hollywood as well. You can look at Jimmy Stewart actually starred in an entirely FBI created movie called The FBI Story.
Right.
And J. Edgar Hoover gives like the intro to that. But so this has been going on for a long time, and it was really ramped up during the Cold War. So I deal with a lot of that in the book as well, with the so-called Hollywood 10 and this whole idea of all these commies in Hollywood are going to completely alter the landscape of America, which I think was hyped up. It was overhyped, and it really contributed to the Cold War dialectic of East versus West. And meanwhile, in the background, it was the banking elite who had set up, Eastern communism, especially with Mao, Bill Donovan, training Mao's guerrillas, who is pretty much the founder of the OSS in America.
Right.
And the OSS was, of course, set up by none other than Ian Fleming and his coterie. So the real spy master behind James Bond is who went and met with Bill Donovan on behalf of the London banking elite on setting up America's spy establishment.
Sure. Yeah, and when you look at the deep ties between intelligence agencies and a lot of these secret societies that are used to initiate and to basically select people that are political leaders and what people call the financial and political elite. There's plenty of examples. Skull and Bones is probably one of the most well known anyway groups that is embedded also in the educational system.
Yeah, Skull and Bones is, of course, directly connected to the CIA, right? I mean, this is total CIA spookland, right? Yale University. And that's, of course, that Eastern establishment is where a lot of the people would be recruited into the CIA. And the best way to understand the CIA is really just the kind of the worker bees of the bankers in Wall Street. That's really all it is. It's not so much the James Bond type thing, although some of the stories are true. But is that a break?
That is a break. Quick one. We'll be back on the other side with our guest, Jay Dyer, right here on Blacklisted Radio. Stay tuned.
You guys are clear?
Thank you, brother. Yeah, I guess we definitely I want to talk about Carol Quigley. Let's see.
Yeah.
Got some notes here. Actually did prep for this show. And we can talk about, anything you want or anything that comes to mind. There is no derailing the show, really. Good conversation's good conversation. It sucks that we have the breaks, but, RBN's got to pay the bills.
Yeah, no, I'm used to it. I know what you mean.
Ken over there can't get paid in Patriot coins. We could pay you in Bitcoin, though, Ken.
And you pay in Chuck E. Cheese tokens?
If you get enough of those.
I kind of missed that. I was getting a drink. What was that?
No, I was saying we have to take breaks, unfortunately, because Ken has to get paid in something besides, Max Kaiser coins.
Right.
Well, you could get paid in Dr. Paul Craig Roberts Chuck E. Cheese coins. That was my Paul Craig Roberts.
Paul Craig Roberts. And you got
Doug, the net, Hans, to destroy the dollar.
last time he was on our show, we asked him about the Council for National Policy, and he was kind of drunk, I think, and he kind of flipped out on us. It was not good.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's an old right-wing think tank that is kind of behind.
Yeah, I know what it is, but I was surprised he flipped out.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that not so much that he was probably at some dinner. They're like, hey, you want to come talk at our dinner? We'll give you like $1,000 and put you in a hotel. He's like, sure.
Uh-huh.
So I don't think it was like part of the grand conspiracy, but people were asking about it, and so he was like,
Right.
just off put. You better ask him. You better ask him, or you're a shill, Doug Owen. I'm like, fine, I'll fucking ask him. And I asked him, and he was wigged out by it. So I don't know. But
Yeah.
Phyllis Schlafly, some of those people, pretty interesting folks in the Patriot movement.
Well, yeah, it is kind of a faux. It was supposed to be a right-wing version of CFR, but I don't really think it has that much power. I mean, there's not.
No, I didn't have the takeoff.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that they kind of hitched their wagon to Ross Perot, and with the death of his party, I don't think it really went anywhere. Although, she lived to be like 90-something. She only recently passed, Phyllis Schlafly, that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that.
She always had, Ken, you probably remember them, the Eagle Forum reports on all the conspiracy radio networks.
Yeah.
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 Old Phyllis Schlafly.
Yeah,
So, Doug,
she
you've
just
been
passed,
doing this a
right?
long time, man.
Yeah, I have. Been hanging out in the corners of the internet since, let's see. Started doing the show in 2008. Started Blacklisted News in like 2006. So, for a few years. And before that, I was, listening to a lot of alternative media and stuff. And being in Austin, I'm familiar with Alex Jones. Always thought he was kind of a knucklehead, but, he had a lot of good information. And, it was better than listening to Rush Limbaugh. Here we go.
It was gone. They're just awesome. They keep asking me, what am I doing? I told them what I did with my cholesterol. I had the blood test, right?
False alarm.
False alarm. That's a cholesterol commercial.
Everything is just
Yeah.
perfect.
There's one.
Yeah, I've been
commercial.
doing this shit since '99, man.
Yeah, Ken's been working the ones and twos at a conspiracy station for a long time.
751. That's 800-2468-751.
It just keeps getting weirder and weirder.
Yeah, no shit.
751. Or go on.
I was gonna say, I bet you've seen a lot.
Till your left hand's free and your right hand grip. With another left hand, watch his right hand slip. Schwartz is gone.
All right, welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio. We're with Jay Dyer, JaysAnalysis.com. You can check out all of his great work. We were talking about his book, Esoteric Hollywood, Sex, Cults, and Symbols in Film. And you definitely need to go to the website. We'll have the links at blacklistedradio.com with the full produced podcast links there, so you can check out the book, check out other things that Jay is doing, like interviewing great people like William Engdahl, talking geopolitics and talking about his new book. We might as well plug that as well because I'm a big fan of his. And I had it here. I had his book here. Let's see. Where'd it go? You just recently interviewed him.
Hegemon.
Yeah. I think he was actually the first guy that got me to Google the word hegemon because every one of his books has hegemon in it. Hegemony. I'm like, yes, Bill Engel. So
You thought it was a Pokemon.
Right, yeah. I was trying to catch it with my phone running around mindlessly, and then all of a sudden I went to Google, and it made me just a little bit smarter. Yeah, but he's been talking about full spectrum dominance and, the Anglo faction of the New World Order, call it what you will. This is, the East versus West kind of continuation that we see today kind of playing out in the Middle East. And so I'm interested. You put out half of the podcast, which I listen to. And so the other half people have to subscribe to your website and become a member to get that. How is that working for you?
Very well, actually. That's kind of how I make a living now.
Really? Wow.
So, yeah, I quit my wage slave day job last year and have been doing this full time for the last year. So it's taken about a year to get. I was living on savings for a while, but it's taken about a year to get to the point where it's pretty much self-sustaining. So, of course, the book being out now is helping with that. And of course grows the audience, but yeah, I wouldn't change my job now for the world. There's nothing better than being your own boss.
No, that's awesome. And when it comes to alternative media, we were talking during the break with Ken there, and RBN's probably one of the very few actual brick and mortar radio stations that has content like this that you can find out there that's been broadcasting for 16, 17 years now. And I know that you publish through Trying Day, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Trying Day is awesome.
I have to give credit to first to Patrick Henningsen for recruiting me to write for 21st Century Wire about March of 2014 or 15. I forget when, but then I got to talking to Sean Stone, and Sean is who more or less got me the book deal through having me on Buzzsaw, and then somebody from Trying Day saw that interview and said, "Hey, do you have a book?" And I said, "Yeah, actually, I've got a whole bunch of film analyses. It's it's kind of what my site's known for." So through a roundabout way, a lot of events kind of came together, and Chris from Trying Day, reached out and said, "Let's do a book." And finally, it's out. It took a long time. It was a lot of damn work. I'll say that much.
Yeah, Chris Milligan's a great guy. We've had him on the show before, and I haven't talked to him in a while, but he's definitely bold. He's had to go through a lot. They've gone through a lot. They were sued, I think, in 2006 for defamation. They actually won that lawsuit, and
wow.
So that they've gone through quite a bit. And they're just one of the few people, like Ed Haslam's Mary's Monkey. We had
Dr. Mary's Monkey.
Yeah, Dr. Mary's Monkey is a crazy story, and if you really want to understand, all of the intricacies of the Oswald Kennedy assassination connection, it's something else. So that's really cool. That's it's definitely, I would imagine, kind of hard to find a publisher that's willing to allow you to say so many things ill of the Hollywood elite.
Well, but as you can see, my book's not really a hit piece. It's not a scandal book. It's not like who's sleeping with who in Hollywood type garbage. It's more of a just straight up social engineering and film criticism book. It's like I said, it's Roger Ebert on acid. It's the best way to put it, right?
Wow.
I mean, if you read Roger Ebert, you're going to get this kind of like whether the movie's good or bad, and maybe a little bit of literary analysis, because he did, I think, a literary degree. But my book is more of a it's just him on acid, right? It's like, what if Roger Ebert were like having a really bad trip and he was watching all these movies and he's like, holy crap, this is.
He opens his third eye and you can see what's happening for real.
Yeah,
and,
right.
Yeah. When Harry Met Sally, what that really means. Yeah. Seeing through all of that.
What is it really? Yeah, people keep making the joke, when are you going to do Esoteric Hollywood? Right.
Right. That would be interesting.
I'm not. No, that's a joke. I'm not doing that. But
no, that's
anyway.
No, because I've been doing this for so long, and I've found it very, very hard for people to put all of their time and effort into producing these kind of valuable resources, and so people that do it successfully, I'm in awe of, and so that's great, because that's one of the things people ask you about radio, and you're like, you're not going to get rich unless you're on a team. Or you even if you're a big L libertarian, you can, or an anarchist, you can find a show. But if you're somewhere like myself where, I have a lot of different, political ideologies and philosophies and, rooted in the Constitution, there's definitely a glass ceiling in the radio market. But one of the things you're doing, you're so prolific, much more than I am. So that's why I definitely wanted to have you on the show, so we could talk about some of the things like spirit cooking. I don't think a lot of people knew what spirit cooking was. I don't know, maybe 4 months ago, a month ago, and because of WikiLeaks, something that you've talked a lot about. We have this John Podesta email about his brother going to this dinner performance with artist Marina Abramovic, and I've seen some of her pictures, some of the artwork that she does with naked teenage girls. Pretty creepy stuff, pretty wild things. And so I think a lot of people are quick to dismiss, oh, they're talking about the occult and the Illuminati and all of this silliness and, skull and bones. But when you look at, just this one little insight into the kind of day-to-day lives, the people that your political leaders hang out with. John Podesta, of course, running the Hillary Clinton campaign. Not too well, though, but... what was your take? From some of this stuff that we heard about Pizzagate, spirit cooking. Did it shock you at all?
No, not at all. Because, for example, in my book, I deal with the Frankfurt School, which was the branch of Marxist critical theory that was very heavily into promoting these kinds of, quote, art. So modern art and modernist and postmodernist art all kind of comes out of this establishment promoted anti-establishmentism, or anti-establishmentarianism, I guess you could say.
Right.
And then there's a reason for that. And you can find even mainstream articles that will talk about why the CIA was interested in promoting degenerate and destructive, ugly art. And it was because of large-scale social engineering. They wanted to reformulate man's idea of man himself, and one of the best ways to do that is through artwork. And so it even ties into architecture. You can look at Bauhaus architecture, which is communist Marxist architecture. It's very sterile, very cold, angular, and ugly concrete blocks. And so there's a natural similarity or affinity between that and more the regular arts, I guess you could say. So there's literary versions of this with deconstructionism and Jacques Derrida, and there's also artistic versions of this with people like Andy Warhol or Jackson Pollock. And believe it or not, those guys were actually teamed up with the CIA.
Sure.
Now, whether how far they knew they were working with or for the CIA is, of course, probably debatable or questionable.
They got some funding. The CIA probably looked at it.
You have the funding coming from, the Rockefeller Foundation was working with the Frankfurt School, and the OSS is who brought the Frankfurt School over to the U.S., and that's been reported even in like Foreign Policy magazine. So this isn't conspiracy theory. This is just actual history, and it's all under the guise of, we're going to fight the Nazis. How are we going to fight the Nazis? With a bunch of ugly Marxist gobbledygook everywhere. That's how we're going to beat the Nazis through the culture wars, right?
Right.
Which is preposterous because it was the same establishment, who had funded Hitler. So
Sure.
You mentioned tragedy and hope. Well, that's what Quigley talks about. Quigley talks about, all this stuff kind of being promoted in the background by the billionaire banking establishment. And particularly in the U.S., it was the leftist, progressive, socialist, communist movements that were run and promoted by the big foundations.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And by extension, that includes the arts. So long story short, that was a long answer to your question about Marina. Abramovich is really just another one of these types of characters who probably doesn't even know. I think she's some sort of Soviet expatriate from Yugoslavia. Who knows how much she actually knows, but she's wining and dining with Lady Gaga and these kinds of people. So, she could
she's
be some
influential.
intelligence operative.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
they dig her. Obviously, they like the artwork.
I think that she's a witch. I think she takes her witchcraft seriously. I really do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that kind of blows your mind. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to this idea that you draw power from symbolism, from sex, blood, magic, all the rest of it is very real and has been well documented. And I think that's one of the things that you're doing in this book. I mean, with all the footnotes, is you're going through and breaking down these people. But yeah, Carol Quigley is one of these just kind of enigmatic people, because when you read his work, I mean, it's so fantastically on point. It's really this view into past bipartisan politics, understanding deep state politics. And so, I he's one of these characters that I don't know how I feel about him, as far as whether or not he was a good guy or a bad guy. I feel like he was a somewhat, a good but still very, very bad person at the end of the day. He's but his work is just, I mean, it's phenomenal. And I mean, that's why he was a mentor to Bill Clinton, and why he was held in such high regard by all of these foundations, institutions, think tanks. I mean, he's definitely, he was so influential.
Yeah. Well, I just finished up an 8-part lecture series on the entirety of the book. So if anybody's interested, they can go to JaysAnalysis and get that full lecture series if you subscribe to my site. But I don't know that anybody's done the entire book yet, so I'm kind of proud of that. I have to brag a little bit. But Tragedy and Hope is an apologetic. And so in my opinion, I don't think he was a good guy. I think he was a real believer in the progressivism of the democratic West, quote unquote,
sure,
as he saw it and as he believed in it. And he really believed that the CFR was going to extend this perspective, this worldview, this ideology to the rest of the globe, and that it was going to work. And so the tragedy that he talks about is the two world wars of the 20th century, and the hope is liberal democracy spreading to the rest of the globe. But as you mentioned with Engdahl in his 2008 book, Full Spectrum Dominance, he pointed out back then that the illusion of democracy being what we're spreading is beginning to crumble, right? Because we're not spreading democracy to Iraq, we're not spreading democracy to the Ukraine or to Syria. No. This is a cloak, quote, democracy. For NGOs, for think tanks, for foundations, for intelligence agencies, for special forces, for Western-controlled operations like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, to wreck these countries and to reorganize them according to a technocratic model.
Sure.
And it has nothing to do with humanitarianism. And now that people are starting to see that, now that we're looking at, that globalism is not the utopia that it was promised, we have to look back to Quigley and say, bro, you got it all wrong. You were way off.
Yeah, well,
now you were right.
Neoliberalism failed, I think, because of the profit. When you look at what Carol Quigley, it's like the blueprint. It's the Constitution. It's a blueprint.
Yeah.
You can do a lot of bad things with it, and so that's why I guess I think that he believed it, and he thought that if good people prevailed, good companies, that would, then it would be better. And of course, the part of the full spectrum dominance is the encirclement and the isolation of Russia, and trying to bring those countries through the World Trade Organization into this system where, in their minds, you wouldn't have world wars because you had too much economic interest vested in Russia in Europe in the United States, and that would bring some kind of parity between superpowers. Nice idea. Really nice idea, but people like Hillary Clinton and the neoconservatives and others in power have squandered that notion, and so the fruit of that ideology of neoliberalism is what we have to judge it on, and that's where the academics fall off, and a lot of those people, it's like, well, it was a good plan. It's like, Yeah, I guess it was a good plan, but the people that carried out, not so good, not so much, and people that are blinded by a certain agenda, no matter what it is, a political philosophy, sometimes don't realize even, or they don't care about how you get to the result as long as you get there. And that has been one of the biggest faux pas. Okay, we can just overthrow Libya. It won't be a big problem. Muammar Gaddafi out. It's going to be great. And I mean, they were bringing Cinnabon and Burger Kings to Libya. Not so much right now. ISIS stronghold. All right, guys, quick break. Final segment with our guest, Jay Dyer, on the other side. We'll talk more about his work and where you can find it right here on Blacklisted Radio.
Y'all are clear?
Cool. Ken, what do we have, like just 3-4 minutes in the last segment? If that.
You asking me?
Yeah. How the last segment's just a few minutes, right?
Yeah, it's like 3.5 minutes or something.
So it's like a perfect plug out, talk a little bit more about your book and how people can pick it up, and then we're good.
Okay.
Easy stuff. I love it. No, it's really cool. I'm really glad that you came on the show tonight, Jay. It's fun. It's fun talking to other people that understand, that are at least.
Yeah, it is. You're a lot better interviewer than quite a few people that I've had.
Oh yeah.
Conversations with. So yeah, some of them are not very good. So I can tell you've been doing it a while.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. Well, yeah. It's. I mean, you have to keep conversation going, and some people get, they're looking at a piece of paper, and you really just have to talk and have a conversation.
Yeah, or they didn't take any gander at your material at all. They're like, so what do you do?
Oh, so
well,
that's
that's
the
worst.
worst.
The link like 2 weeks ago. Did you not look at like why do you even have me on your show if you don't know what I do?
So tell us about Blood, Sex, Magic. Is that just a Chili Pepper song, bro?
I was on some woman's show one time. It was like a year ago, and she was like, "So tell us about Star Wars." And I was like, "What?" she's like, "You write about movies and Star Wars." I was like, "Actually, I haven't done anything on Star Wars, but I could talk about Star Wars." And so, she, believe it or not, she had never seen Star Wars. And so I started talking about it. I was like, okay, well, I guess we can talk about Star Wars. And she was like, she starts quoting something, and it's not Star Wars. And I'm like, that's not. Are we talking about the same movie?
That's
anyway,
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
It was really goofy.
Yeah. There's some pretty goofy people out there that are doing shows. They just ask anybody out there, would you come on my show? And you're like, yeah.
Right.
Sure. Okay. Can you talk? Yeah. I ran a radio network for, what was it? About 5 years, and we had a couple hosts that were like that. They were just really nice people, but just really, really bad, and just not good at public speaking and scared.
Right.
Totally intimidated by this idea. Already scared of the technology, barely could use Skype, and they're like, That's why I'm glad I don't do that anymore. That was fun. I leave it up to Ken. I'm sure Ken has a lot of fun dealing with people and technology.
Oh, yeah.
I don't hear the commercials. All right, welcome back. Final segment here with our guest, Jay Dyer, JaysAnalysis.com. All the links will be there for you at blacklistedраdio.com. You don't hold anything back. I was reading the book, and one of the quotes that hit me: Hollywood is no different, functioning as the propaganda arm of the Antichrist media establishment, intent on re-engineering society into its alchemical opposite, unleashing the destructive forces of cultural Marxism and death. This is why stories and narratives continue to emerge in Hollywood scandals, sex, murder, rituals, occult crime, with no puzzle pieces ever being put together. So you know, that I like that because, you know, you don't kind of lead you into this story like I don't know his perspective or, you know, or you don't understand where the writer's coming from. I mean, you're like, boom, right in your face. We're going to talk about this and prepare for it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I deal with a whole bevy of topics, you know, everything from philosophy, as I said, to the esoteric, to conspiracies, the MK Ultra, CIA, espionage, James Bond, all of that is in the book, as well as quite a bit of film history and, you know, all the way back to Hitchcock, stuff like that, German Expressionism. There's chapters on all that. So I think that if you're a film buff, or if you want to wake up your friends and family who may not be interested in the topics that you're interested in, through some, you know, like you can hand them a political book, they're not going to read it. But maybe if you give them some crazy, fringy movie book, like what?
Right.
Chapter on E.T. What the heck? How does E.T. relate to conspiracies? That's crazy.
Phone home. Yeah, well, you know, and my wife's a perfect example. I mean, she's always talked about, you know, obviously Britney Spears is a Manchurian Candidate, mind slave, Disney is engineering these kid prodigies, and she's always, I mean, you know, bringing me that stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I love it. So I know exactly where you're coming from, because it is receptive to a lot of people that when I talk about politics or geopolitics or what's happening in the Ukraine today, or, you know, what you know, their eyes roll back in their head. And
exactly.
So there's a lot of different paths. I hate to use the term, the proverbial rabbit hole, but there's a lot of different angles to looking at it, and I think it's really important messaging. And I think a lot of people have, at least through this last election, have seen through the media lens and have seen past it, and that are, you know, starting to really question, you know, the messaging that we're getting from the government through the media. And so I think that a lot more people will be receptive to your work, Jay.
Yeah, I hope so. Hopefully we can change things for the better and not be so disgusting in this country. I think we can be a lot better.
Yeah, and understanding how the world works makes you a lot happier. I see so many of these crying people that don't understand what's happening because they are literally engaging in cognitive dissonance. They think that Hillary's progressive, but they know that she takes money from Saudi Arabia. So it really, you know, the work that you're doing is helping mind melt the masses. Guys, that's our time. Jay Dyer has been our guest. Check out his website, JaysAnalysis.com. Go there, subscribe to his podcast, and support interesting, true, free, independent media. I'll be back next week for another live edition of Blacklisted Radio. Until then, take care.